episode of Christ in the Camper. My name's Taylor.
And Samantha.
And we have gone through all of your Q&As, and we decided that we were going to pick out the top 3 questions that we thought, were funny or relatable, things like that. So the first question is,
what are your favorite Christian pickup lines?
Oh my gosh, I actually have a funny story about this. And so my husband, we were out to dinner one night with my pastor and pastor's wife, and I don't even know how the subject came up, but we were talking and Christian pickup lines came up. And I think it was actually one of my youth kids that started the conversation. And I kid you not, we're in the middle of Texas Roadhouse and we're sitting in the booth, and all of a sudden my husband looks over at me and he goes, "Hey, I put the stud in Bible study." And at that moment, we all busted out laughing. Like, it was like, I was laughing so hard my stomach hurt. Like, the way he did it with his facial expressions, his deep voice, like, directly at me. It was hysterical.
I think by far, I don't know. I don't really have the right settings to use them, but I think the funniest that I've came across is, I was reading in the book of Numbers and just so happened to notice that I don't have yours yet. Which, I think that's my favorite so far.
But here's my question though, like, if a guy would actually come up to you and be like, say those Christian pickup lines, would you actually know how to react to it? Like, because when my husband did it to me, I just kind of looked at him and was like, "Are you serious right now? Like, that's what you have for me?" Like, and I think it's so funny because, like, in today's generation, you don't use pickup lines. Like, you never see a guy just walking down the street and be like, "Oh yeah, I put the stud in Bible study." Like,
Right.
That's like one of those things where you don't hear that anymore.
Okay, so our next question is, what is a series that you stopped watching and why?
Ooh. Oh, man. I have had so much conviction with that question. And the reason I say that is because growing up, and you remember this because I was a huge fan of it, like, massive fan of this show. And me and my best friend at the time, that was like our thing. Like, we had matching shirts, matching bracelets. We were going to go to a conference that they held. And the show that I actually stopped watching, and I know I'm such a sinner, it was Supernatural. And I never realized how bad or how demonic the show was until I got into church.
Right.
And I was like, and even then, even with like my first couple years in church, I was like, whatever, it is what it is. Everything is what you make it. But then once I got more mature in church and everything, I realized that, I'm opening spiritual portals into my life that I had no idea. And, some of the things, like, horror movies are another really bad one. And I am really bad with horror movies because, I grew up loving Halloween and loving horror movies and everything and stuff like that. And I never realized what they actually put in movies until I did my research, and I was like, whoa, like, hold up. I mean, even Disney, like, if you watch certain things on Disney, it's garbage, man.
Yeah. I think mine, not necessarily, not in the same reasons, but I had to stop and take a second and step back from Gilmore Girls personally.
Did you really?
Because, I think there's like 7 seasons to that series, and like they came out with a newer series, like as an add-on on top of that. And like I loved that show so much. But like at the same time, I realized, that's where I was putting all of my time. I feel like it
so
kind
you
of
actually
became an addiction
stopped
to
because it was taking you away from things. I never thought about that way. Well, if we're being completely honest, I did the same exact thing with Grey's Anatomy.
Mhm.
Like, all my Grey's Anatomy fans out there, like, woo woo. All right, I think I binge watched that series for like 3 months straight, and like but I never really thought about that, like having to step away from a series because it was taking too much time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I didn't that never crossed my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I always thought about like us quitting shows or anything.
Yeah.
Because of what was in them.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily like because it was actually taking time away from God.
Right.
But
so our next question is, what is your favorite Christian song at the moment?
ooh, I'm so bad at Christian songs, and like the funny thing is I'm not bad at listening to them. I'm bad at remembering the names. And like I'll have so many songs on my playlist. I'll be like, oh, the one that goes like or like something along those lines. But what is your favorite song?
Mine at the moment is it's called A Man Named Job, and it is by Ryan Proudfoot. I think that's his last name. But I really like that song at the moment. It's between that and Rest on Us by Upper Room is also a really good one.
See, I don't know. I'm stuck between two because for the past couple months I've been stuck on what was actually my wedding song was The Blessing.
Mm-hmm.
And I walked down to the aisle to that song because it made me think with that song. It was like, I am praying for my family. I am praying for kids. I am praying for all this. Like, and it makes the song to me set different because we don't always pray for our future. Mm-hmm. We're constantly praying for the present. Mm-hmm. So, like, being newly married and everything, like, for me, it was like one of those things like, I am praying for my future. Mm-hmm. I am praying for my kids. I am praying for my future family. Like, right. I think that's one thing that really hit me with that. And then my other one is, it's a brand new song that I believe just came out, or at least brand new to me. Mm-hmm. It's called Roses by Andrew Rip. And that song was so powerful when I first heard it, and I was like, it makes sense. Right. And in the song, he talks about, why God made roses. Mm-hmm. And talking about they're beautiful, but they're also painful. Right. You stick your finger on a thorn on a rose, you're going to be like, ouch, that hurt. Right. But it was one of those things where it was like, ooh, like, dang, that was like a powerful. You ever listen to a worship song and you're like, oh, like a right, like yeah. I felt like you got hit in the chest with something, like, oh, like I felt it. But I mean, like, I'm bad because when I'll be worshiping and I'll be worshiping in my car or something like that, and I'll be like, throwing my hands up and I'll be like crying and I'll be like, no, Jesus, not right now. I can't do this. I'm driving.
You have to have Jesus take the wheel in that moment.
No, Jesus, don't take the wheel. I'm praising you, but don't take the wheel. But, I mean, like, it's crazy because you actually have to find the meanings of the worship songs that you listen to. But all right, well, I think we are going to go ahead and get into our subject of the night. And Sam, you want to present us with our subject that you picked tonight?
So tonight we are going to be talking about God and how he is love and how he is divine love.
All about that love.
So starting off, everybody, absolutely everybody, is worthy of this agape. Sorry,
agave.
Agave.
It's agave.
Not the plant. Oh my goodness. Okay.
It's agape.
Yeah, everybody's worthy of this love. Yeah, he invites us to have that love with him, and
so actually, I'm gonna chime in here because if you go into 1 John, and that is really, like, to me, that is the biggest book in the Bible that talks about all about love and all about God's love. Right. And yes, the Bible, of course it's said everywhere in there, but I think 1 John for me is really that one that's like, it hits the hits the nail. It's like,
Right.
hey, look at this love, where is it coming from? How do we do it? Everything else. And, for me, the next thing that comes next to love is grace. And I actually was talking to my youth group earlier this past week about, what grace, what's a good way to see grace.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I saw it was, it's God's riches at Christ's expense.
Mm.
And I feel like a lot of time that's how we should view love, as grace.
Right.
We should view his love like that. So I have a couple questions with all about love tonight. And the first question is, what is the source of love? And obviously, it's God.
Right.
I mean, he says it in 1 John 4, we love because he first loved us.
Right.
And for me, I tend to see myself as almost like a cold-hearted person sometimes. I know that's horrible to say as a Christian, but
mm-hmm.
I can be kind of brutal. So, I will give you the blunt truth.
Right.
And I'll admit that is definitely a struggle that I show, is showing everybody the true love of God. And it's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Because you would think that loving everybody and anything equally, with the same source of love that God has shown us, you think we would be able to pick that up.
Right. I think that, 1 Corinthians 13:4, it gives us all of those examples of what love is supposed to look like. And, love is patient, love is kind, does not envy, does not boast, is not arrogant, is not rude, so on. We see that as a perfect example from Jesus. And that in and of itself, the example that he shows us that he is love. He is the perfect example of love, and how we should love.
Yeah, and I just as far as being the source of love, I guess sometimes we never necessarily realize that our love comes from God.
Right.
Or at least let me put it this way. At least it should come from God.
Right.
All of your love should be godly no matter what. We should be showing the same, grace and the same love as God has shown us. I mean,
right.
He gave his son up for us.
Right.
Would you be willing to give your own child or your own sibling or whoever, up for everybody else like that? It's crazy to me. But the next source, it comes down to the model of love. And the answer to that is the Christ. In 1 John 3:16, you remember that song, 1 John 3:16? It's like that country song.
I think you would have to sing it for me to remember.
Yeah, if you catch me singing, you're funny. Oh my gosh, I can't remember the name of the song. It's a country song. Anyways. So it says, "This is how we know what love is. Jesus Christ laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for our brothers and sisters. If anyone has material possessions and sees a brother or sister in need, but has no pity on them, how can the love of God be in that person? Dear children, let us not love with words or speech, but with actions and in truth." Man. You know how people always it's how you say things, but it's totally crazy because you just looked at that verse and it says it's not all in words, it's in actions. If you were to go and see a homeless person on the side of the street, would you stop and give them anything and everything you had?
Right.
Or would you just be like, oh, they're going to use it for drugs and keep going?
Right. I think, the biggest part of everything is coming to the realization that, he died for us because he loved us so much. Okay, Jesus was sweating blood at that point. Understanding the suffering that he went through because of, God's ultimate plan and how much God loved us, for that matter. But, even walking on earth, he was expressing the perfect example of love. You know, he was out healing people, he was caring for people, he was talking to the sinners, talking to the tax collectors, which everybody else, you know, they even asked him. They were like, you know, why do you sit and talk and eat with the sinners and tax collectors? But he didn't come to save the righteous. He came to save the sinners.
So I think it's so funny because, like, we were somewhere. I don't remember where we were at. But I know it was you, me, and Kyle. And we were out somewhere, and there was a couple other people, and we were all sitting together. And all of a sudden, Kyle looks over at me and goes, "Yeah, we're on the reject bench." I was like, at that moment, I had busted out laughing because I'm sitting there thinking, and now that I'm thinking about this story, I'm like, wow, like, yeah, we might be the reject bench, but at least Jesus would sit with us to talk to us. But, like, okay, so here's a question for you, though. Okay, in the Bible it says we should go to any extent, you know, basically to show the love of God. What's the what's the furthest you would go to show the love of
I feel like, I don't know. Gosh, that's like a hard one just to, like, yeah, pluck out of my brain. But at the same time, like, I feel like depending on the circumstance, because there's so many different. I'm not saying that I wouldn't. Oh gosh.
No. I'm not trying. I'm not trying to do that.
Sorry.
Like, I'm trying to be like,
Yeah, I get that.
like,
but like
off the top of your head, what is the furthest you would go for helping somebody?
for helping somebody.
I mean, helping somebody and showing love, I feel, is the same thing. I mean, it said it right there. Love with words or speech,
Right.
but with actions and in truth.
Right. I feel like depending, I mean, I would give anything that I had on me, or I feel like it's kind of hard to say like an amount when I wouldn't know the situation, if that makes sense. Like, if I don't know what I'm going into. But I mean, if it was a homeless person, I would give them what I have. If it was somebody who needed something, I would make sure that I did what I could to give them what they needed. But yeah, I don't know how to put my past thought into words about like
where to go with that question.
Yeah.
Well, that's like a hard question to answer because like there's so many different scenarios out there.
Right.
You know, whether it comes to homeless, it can go all the way down the spectrum to homeless people.
Right.
It could go all the way down the spectrum to helping the sick, helping the people that need healing. You know, it could be as simple as you see some random stranger on the side of the road or out in the store or whatever, and you just get this feeling like, I need to go pray for them.
Right.
Would you ever, I mean, like, I can't say anything because I've done it before. Would you ever go up to a stranger and just go pray for them?
I have in the past, actually, and I think, like, yeah, there's a lot of good that comes from that. If you get that feeling, or if you feel like God's calling you, like, this person needs you right now to pray for them, there's a reason for that. And, I mean, the amount of, you know, it's right when they can sit there and tell you and break down into tears and be like, I really needed that today. And I feel like that's very encouraging and uplifting as a Christian.
So our next thing is we're going to move to chapter 4 in 1 John, and it says, the question is the manifestation of love by believers. So I think what they're asking is, are we supposed to be are we supposed to love everyone and anyone no matter what, especially as believers? And, you know, to answer that question is you have to love others. You know, that person could have just stabbed you in the back.
Right.
Done the worst thing possible. But yet you're still supposed to show the love of God. And in 1 John 4:21, it actually says, and he has given us this command. Anyone who loves God must also love their brother and sister. And, you know, that to me, you look at it this way. We stab Jesus in the back how many times a day? How many times a day do we sin? How many, you know, and it's crazy because Christians will actually look at you and tell you, oh, I didn't sin today.
Mm-hmm.
Or I didn't sin. I don't sin.
Right.
Or I'm as clean as a clean tissue.
Right.
But in actuality, us not confessing our sins and us not seeing that we're not perfect is what stops us. I believe is what stops us from loving others.
Right.
Because we think we're better than everybody else, when in reality, we need to show the same love that God is showing us.
Right. And I mean, we're commanded to love our enemies. It's not going to be natural. It's not going to be easy at that. It says that, sorry, my mind is blanking. Our love is made perfect by choosing to love. We're not always going to be able to just automatically, it's not going to be easy at first.
No.
But the way that we perfect loving everybody is by choosing to love constantly.
That's so true. And that's something I struggle with personally, is loving constantly. I work in retail as an assistant manager, and there's those days, okay, where you get that person that comes in and is gonna test every nerve you have that day. And at the end of the day, you're gonna be like, "Oh my gosh, I'm ready to strangle this person!" Or you have those really tough days where you're like, "Oh, hold my Jesus!" I'll be right back. No, but you're right though. We constantly have to show love, because if we don't constantly show it, we're gonna go up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, and it's almost kind of one of those routines where as a child, you have to have a routine.
Right. You've got to build up the habit.
And you've got to build up the habit of constantly showing love, no matter who the person is or where the person's come from or what the person's done, because at the end of the day, we are all the same. We're all dust and we're all this.
Right.
We're all trying our very best. And that's such a tough one, because it's wow.
Right.
So the next question is what is the extent of love? And this is where I kind of feel like we get into that agape love and what it means. So the definition of biblical love is agape, and it means love is active yet selfless. And agape love is also God's pattern for our love for Him. We should be showing that endless love no matter what. It's and at the end of the day, it's a sacrifice of life.
Right.
Because God sacrificed His only child for us. How much love does that show?
Right.
So it goes back to the very beginning. Where's the source of love? We should be able to drop anything and sacrifice our own life for that love. And it's one of those things where it's, are you going to do it? Or are you not?
Right.
And I feel like, especially, and it's harder, I want to say, in a non-denominational standpoint, because you don't know what's going to walk through. Well, I take that back. It's harder for any church, because you don't know what's going to walk through that door.
Right.
You don't know if the most broken person's going to walk through that door. You don't know if a person who came from abuse, who is church hurt, who is, struggling their faith, atheist, gay, whatever, you don't know who's going to walk through that door. And at the end of the day, no matter their sins, no matter our sins, no matter what, it should be love.
I think one of my favorite posts I think I've ever seen come across Facebook, and they were just these illustrations, and it showed Jesus. And one of his examples of loving for others was washing feet. And that's how he expressed that he cared as well. And it showed Jesus washing, somebody with a lesbian pride flag in their arms, Jesus washing police officers' feet, Jesus washing, some of these people that we think of as maybe a little more difficult to understand the situation that they're going through, washing their feet, and how he showed their love to them through that. And I think that's really, really encouraging to see.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's crazy because the way that we treat each other today, I think if Jesus were to come back, he'd be mortified. Because it's sad that people of two totally different beliefs can't stand in the same room.
Right.
Because we have different beliefs.
Right.
And I feel as Christians, we should know better.
Mm-hmm.
And we should be opening and loving and welcoming to our home. There's actually there's a part in the Bible, and I can't for the life of me remember the verse, but it tells you that we should be welcoming people into our homes. Mm-hmm. Being good home stewards, something along those lines.
Right.
The Taylor Bridge version. It's like those things. I mean, above in our church, as soon as you walk through the door, you look up, and above the sanctuary door, it says "Welcome Home," and it has a little red heart next to it. And to me, that's what we should be doing.
Right.
We should be as welcoming and as loving to that person,
right,
as if they were to walk into their own home.
Right.
Like, that feeling when you come home, or like after a long weekend, or like a long day or whatever, and you see your animal, like your dog or your cat or whatever, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, you're home! Let me love you! Let me smother you!" Like, that's how we should be. We should be like dogs and cats and stuff. We should be like, "Oh my gosh, like, you're home! I love you! Like, let me share the love." Now, I'm not talking about, like, don't jump on people. Don't get me wrong. Don't, like, lick them on the face. That might be a little too loving. It might be a little too weird. But that's how it should be, though.
I think one of the most common misconceptions about, like, churches in general is, people come in to the church thinking that this is a place full of perfect people. And when, it's meant to be a hospital for the hurting. It's meant to be there to help broken hearts, to fix people up and, help their walks with God. And it's not always about where we are in our stages of life compared to us all growing together and individually on our walks.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I feel like the extent of love, and it's hard because I'm one of those people that struggle accepting love. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is that, I have trust issues. Let me throw my hands up and let me raise all four of my legs. Both of my legs and both of my arms. I struggle accepting love.
Right.
But I think I struggle so much accepting love is because I wasn't taught what real love was until I got older. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, what? Like, you're just supposed to let people into your lives? Like, you're supposed to be, what? Like, what is this? So, like, when I first started going to Eagle, it's the funniest thing. They had me labeled as, like, a threat. Because I came in with this, like, massive jacket, my hair up in a ponytail, and I was, like, the grumpiest teenager you had ever met. Like, do you remember coming with us? Like,
yeah, we were complete opposites, because you got so annoyed.
I was so mad they dragged me to church. And, like, I was so, like, I hated the world. Like, I did not want to be there. And then there's Samantha, like, oh, this is the best thing ever! like that's just how it was. But what I learned was that they constantly were trying to show love to what I was doing.
Right.
And it was like a kid poking somebody, like, hey, what are you doing? Hey, what are you doing? Hey, what are you doing? Hey, I love you. Hey, I love you. Hey, I love you. Like, it was like a constant thing. So I feel like, the result of love it really sits on you, because the more you love a person, the more you're going to sit there and change a person.
Right. I think one of my favorite scriptures on love, um, Luke 6:31. Do to others as you would have them do to you.
So if I give you $10, will you give me $10?
So, like, you know, we all have that, you know, yearning for love, the wanting to be loved. Some of us more than others. But you know, like we all deep down have that desire in our hearts to feel love. And I think something that we have to come to realize is, you know, you reap what you sow. Are you putting in the work? Are you loving others? Are you truly and genuinely caring? And, you know, part of that, like, I think one of the biggest ways you can love somebody is listening. And just like, you know, doesn't matter what they're going through, just sitting down and listening and, you know, genuinely tuning in to what's going on.
Dude, I don't even, you don't even necessarily even have to listen to them. Like, my thing is like, bro, you're having a hard time. You don't want to talk about it. That's fine. You want to you want to sit in the dark? Cool, I'm coming over to sit in the dark with you.
Right.
Like it's one of those things. But the answer to the result of love is abiding presence of God and life. And in 1 John 4:12, it says, let me find it. 13, 12. No one has ever seen God, but if we love one another, God lives in us, and his love is made complete in this.
Right.
This is how we know that we live in him, and he in us. He has given us his spirit. So if he's truly given us his spirit, then we should be loving like him.
Right.
And I feel like in today's world, especially with kids, you know, because that's mainly where I'm at, is in kids ministry, is that from a young age they're taught to start building walls.
Right.
They're taught, I can't trust this person. Mm-hmm. I can't trust that person. Oh, well, you know, if something's not going that person's way or whatever, you know, whatever, it's on them. Mm-hmm. And like you see that a lot, and that's why kids just don't get along nowadays. Like, and I feel like everybody gets their feelings hurt, and now it's like, oh well, your feelings are hurt, so whatever, deuces.
Right.
Like, and I'll admit it, I can be mean. Like, I can be mean sometimes, but it shows me that I'm not in the right place.
Right.
But I feel like there's a difference between loving somebody and judging somebody.
Right.
Because I feel like oftentimes we'll sit there and we'll be two-faced. Mm-hmm. We'll show somebody the greatest love in the world. Oh, you're so loved. I care about you. Let me know what you need. Mm-hmm. Oh, you need help doing this? Let me help you. But then go around behind their backs and be like, oh my goodness, did you... How dare that person, or I love it when people like give money to homeless people and then they're like, they're probably gonna go buy drugs now. Like, that's the worst thing ever, because you literally are just undoing everything that you just did.
Right. I think one of like the hardest things is, you know, having to like actually put in the work to love. And, you know, yes, it's a part of our character, and loving people is gonna come naturally because God made us in his image. You know, he made us to have that characteristic to love other people. But we as people still have to put in the work and the extra mile to use that characteristic that he has given us to, you know, go have that conversation, go sit there and, you know, go talk to that person, go help this person. And I feel like a lot of times we can get so busy in life that, we genuinely forget to put the extra work in to truly and genuinely love people.
And I feel like we don't always appreciate it.
Right.
Like, we don't appreciate God's love.
Mm-hmm.
We don't appreciate what He's given us. Like, we're so stuck in our, and this is something I taught this past Sunday, was suffering in divine perspective. And we are so caught up in our own suffering that we can't show the love that people deserve because we'd rather focus on ourselves.
Yeah.
And instead of, seeing all of the love that God has given us, we'd rather just live in our suffering and create more of our own suffering than showing the love. If there was more love out there and we actually saw, it'd be like almost looking through God's eyes.
Right.
Like, if I could do anything, I'd want to see everything through God's eyes. Because your entire perspective of people, an entire perspective of the world would change in a heartbeat.
Right.
Like, I feel like that's like, like that question, like, if you had any superpower, what would you want? Like, I'm gonna look through God's eyes.
Right.
Like, seriously, like, if we were to see and look through God's eyes, we would truly sit there and see how much love the world needs.
Right.
Because there's so many people that are out there and they're like, oh, you don't need this. Oh, you grow up.
Right.
And that's the other thing too, is that people are always told to grow up and get over it. Well, maybe if you just showed them the love, it wouldn't have resulted in what it's resulted in.
Right.
But I mean, that's just how it is nowadays. There's not a lot of love up there. Yeah, I feel like when we talk about love, especially in like a Christian aspect, you ever feel like you're in like, what is it, like the 70s, like the hippie era, and you're like, just love, dude, peace out. like that's how it feels sometimes. I'm like, all you need is love. But yeah, there's a song or something that goes like that. But that's how I feel. Or like, sometimes I feel like, especially if you're trying to love somebody and then you bring Christianity and stuff into it, like, I feel like the second you start that, there's going to be people that look at you and be like, dude, all I can hear coming out of your mouth is, Jesus loves me this side. Like, sometimes people won't let you love them.
Right. I think one of the best examples out there is, people might not always, if you're trying to introduce Christianity or the Bible in general to people, if you are not being a representation of love, then how are they supposed to know what God's love is going to feel like for them in their lives when they start their Christian walk? You might be the only Bible that person ever reads. And to truly sit there and care and show that love genuinely, you're going to show people a glimpse of God's love for them.
I mean, not even that. You are their first, like you said, that's their first glimpse of Jesus.
Right.
So if your encounter with somebody, or like your first encounter with somebody, isn't Jesus-like, or you're not showing the love that you should, or you're not acting or behaving the way that you should, there's an issue.
Right.
Because that could have been your one shot to bring that person to Christ.
Right.
And it's crazy because it's like, and I always, before every youth event, if we're traveling, if we're going to camp, if we're going, anywhere, I always tell the kids, like, we went on outreach Saturday and we went door to door. And of course, they're kids, they're teenagers, God bless them. But the first thing out of my mouth was, you are representing Christ.
Right.
You are not only just representing our church, you're not only representing our youth group, but you are representing Christ.
Right.
And it's one of those things where it's, did you realize that somebody's always watching you?
Right.
Do you realize that you are that person's first glimpse?
Right.
Are you showing, you're not going to get results from love if you don't show love.
Right.
And when I mean love, I don't mean like, again, like I said, that sarcastic love. I mean like that full on Jesus love.
Right.
Now I need a shirt that says that. Jesus love. No. But it's hard.
Right.
I mean, you look at all the wars that we're in. You look at all the racism out there. You look at all the hate on religion. Every religion out there.
Right.
Like, you see all of this hate and hate and hate, and it's more and it's building. And we're so quick to cancel somebody, but yet we're not quick enough to love them.
Right.
To show them mercy, to show them kindness. You know, even if that person did stab you in the back.
Right.
You know, are you going to still show them mercy and love? Like God has shown us.
Right. I think I was sitting there and I was thinking the other day, and you know how, like, you go through the grocery store, like, checkout line?
Yeah.
Like, all the time, right?
Yeah.
I mean, on average, you're probably there on a minimum of 2-3 times a month. Maybe less. Maybe way more if you're our family.
I was going to say, if you're our family, we're there like 3 times a week.
But, I mean, if you think about it, you have an opportunity every time you go to that checkout to have probably at least, depending on how much you get, a minimum of 2 minutes with that person that's checking you out, checking your items out. You know, and they'll genuinely ask, or they'll typically, sorry, not genuinely, but typically, my words, they'll typically ask, they'll be like, hey, how was your day? Or something along those lines. And our first reaction is, you know, I need to get through this. I need to, like, you know, I have things I've got to keep doing.
Not Walmart.
I've got to, you know, do this. I've got to do that. And you're normally just like, good. And then they're like, how are you? And they're like, good. Well, like,
and that's the end of the conversation right there.
On, right?
like, you good? Yeah, I'm good, bro.
You know, are we actually taking the time to care and love for people? I mean, like, yeah, you're not, like, hating them, clearly. But are you genuinely pouring out Christ-like love? How would Christ go through a Walmart grocery store and check out his groceries? What conversations would he have with the cashier?
Man, you make me feel all guilty about me going to Walmart now. Because I'm like, I'm anti-Walmart, guys. I need every bit of Jesus I need to go into Walmart. But, like, you're right, though. Like, are you intentionally trying to show love? Are you intentionally putting in the effort? Are you intentionally trying to be that first look of Jesus?
Right.
Because if you're not, then what are you doing?
Right.
Are you intentionally trying? Or are you like, oh, I'll stick it off for another day.
Right.
like how I feel about the dishes. I'll put it off for another day. Like, it's not gonna, like, you know, get too bad.
Right.
But again, what are we intentionally doing?
Right.
Are we intentionally showing love? Are we intentionally being all about love?
And how are we? Okay. So, I think a good way to, like, kind of wrap this up. What are some of the best ways we can love people?
Yeah.
Putting examples out there.
Oh, like right now?
Yeah, like right now.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
No, I didn't know if you were, like, saving that for people or what.
No,
but all right.
No.
Intentionally showing love. What are some examples? Praying over people.
Right.
Man, like, you see somebody, like, looking down, being upset, you know, crying, holding on your... But can I pray for you?
Right.
Can I come pray for you? Can I come show you a little bit of Jesus?
Right.
You know, I don't know if you believe in it. 9 times out of 10, they'll tell you yes.
Right.
Like, and it's crazy because people are like, oh, people hate Christians, they're this or that.
And then,
no, they've just never seen it before.
Right.
They don't know what it is. They're so used to not knowing what it is that we're like, oh, you know, we don't want to touch anybody.
Right.
We don't want to lay hands on anybody.
Right.
We don't want to pray over people. But 9 times out of 10, they just don't know what Jesus looks like.
Right.
I mean, another way to me to show love. I think the other way would be is to act like you love people.
Right.
Have a smile on your face. Talk nicely. Don't be cussing. Don't don't be what we like to call in my house, don't have a rested bird face on all the time.
Right.
Look inviting, look welcoming, look loving.
Be
loving.
Yes.
Be loving. Look welcoming. I always used to get picked on in school because I looked like I was this big mean person walking down the hallways because I just didn't want to talk to nobody. But in actuality, like, there's times that that's not necessarily the case.
Right.
Keep an eye on what you're looking like.
Right.
And your movements and your actions and your facial expressions and your tone in your voice.
Right.
For every teenager out there, your tone in your voice. I think that's another way. And, get in that routine like we said in the beginning. Like, if you get into that routine of constantly showing love, it's going to be like nothing at the end of the day.
And I mean, you can even think about it in like little steps working up to where you want to be in loving people. You could sit there and be like, okay, well, today I am going to go and I'm going to pray for our local firefighters and police officers.
Yeah.
Or maybe tomorrow I'll go make a meal for somebody who is hurting or having a hard time. Small actions like that can very easily build up to loving somebody and always having the thought of being intentional with loving people.
Yeah, and that's just like we talked about earlier. It's not just words, it's actions.
Right.
Like, go and, I don't know, make somebody cookies.
Right.
You're not good at baking, go see if you can help somebody out with yard work or something. Or, pick a talent of yours and go do it.
Right.
Because ultimately that's what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be taking our gifts from God and showing people our gifts and embracing God in our gifts. But I think that those are like the top 3 ways to be showing love nowadays. Because if not, who else is going to?
Right.
Or is love going to be like the next canceled thing? And the more generations that keep coming aren't going to know what true love or showing true love is.
Right.
And it's just going to keep going down and down and down until everybody hates everybody.
Right.
And that's going to be the end of it. But, I mean, I think that was a great wrap-up question for us tonight. And, I want you guys to be thinking, am I generally trying to show love? Am I constantly trying to show the true love of God?
Right.
And in that, I'm going to leave you with a quote from Sandy Smith. And it says, "Lord, you are the beginning and the end, and the very essence of love in me. Open my eyes to see as you see, and love others through me." And that right there is everything.
Right.
How can you be a Christian and not love? But, alright guys, well that is a wrap up on tonight's lesson, and we just want to thank you guys so much for tuning in with Christ in the Camper with us. My name's Taylor.
And Samantha.
And we'll talk to you guys later.